My name is Anna Park. Did my neighbor betray me? I live in a small house in a quiet suburb. I like my street. I like the small community. But one day I felt a strong injustice. A neighbor said I stole from him. I was the victim. I felt shocked and angry. I heard noise at night by the fence. My landlord did not listen to me at first. The tenant next door told a story. The block watched. I tried to tell the truth. I felt alone and afraid. I kept a small wooden box with old letters and a little money. Someone took it. The property was gone. I wanted my box back. I wanted my name cleared. This is the story of what I lost and how life came full circle. My name is Anna Park and I live on Elm Block. I live on the second house on the left. I know my neighbor well. He is tall and friendly in daytime. He is loud at night. He makes noise by his gate. He is a long-term tenant in our block. I pay my rent to the landlord every month. I keep a small wooden box under my bed. The box has old letters and a little money. The letters are from my mother. They are very old. One morning I woke and the box was gone. I looked under the bed. I looked in each room. I looked in the closet. I asked my neighbor, "Have you seen my box?" He said, "No." I felt a cold fear in my chest. I went to the fence and walked to his door. I knocked. He opened the door with a smile. He said, "I found a box by the fence. It is mine now." I felt my hands shake. I said, "You took my box." He said, "No. I found it on my property." I said, "That is my box. The letters are mine." He laughed and closed the door. I felt betrayed. I went to the landlord. I told him the story. The landlord listened but did not act. He said the neighbor is a long-term tenant. He said the dispute is small. I felt the community turn away. People talked in the block. Some believed me. Some did not. The noise of gossip grew. I wanted the truth. I wanted help with the landlord. I wanted my box. I put a note on my door. The note asked neighbors for help. I waited by the fence at night. I watched the block. I saw lights move. I saw the neighbor carry a small parcel to his car. I felt sure my box was in that parcel. I took a photo on my phone. I felt scared, but I wanted proof. I walked back to my house and called a friend. "Please come," I said. "I need you to see this." My friend came at once. We planned to go to the landlord with the phone photo. But when we arrived, the landlord was not home. The neighbor was smiling on the porch. He said nothing about the box. The friend looked at the photo and said, "We must show this at the community meeting." I nodded. The meeting would be tonight at the community hall. I held the photo tight. I felt the first crack in hope and fear. The meeting would tell the truth or make more trouble. The community meeting was full. I sat in the back. I watched my neighbor speak first. He told a simple story. He said he found the box near the fence. He said he did not know the owner. He smiled and the room clapped. I felt my face go hot. I stood up. I held my phone with the photo. I said, "I have proof." I put the photo on the projector. The photo showed the neighbor with a parcel. He looked surprised. He said, "This is not my parcel." People looked around. A man from the block asked, "Did you show this to the landlord?" I said, "Yes, but he did not help." A quiet voice said, "We should look at property rules." The landlord sat in the front. He looked tired. He said he had no proof. He said, "We need clear rules for lost property." The neighbor looked calm and said, "This is a small dispute. I will return nothing." I felt small and angry. I said, "These letters are from my mother. They are not small to me." A woman in the room stood. She said, "I am the tenant at number 10. I saw him sell small things at the weekend market." The room went quiet. A man said, "Go to the market with a description." I went the next morning. The market was full in the suburb. I walked the stalls. I asked each seller. No one saw my box. Then a voice called, "Anna?" It was the tenant from number 10. She pointed to a stall. The stall had small wooden things. The seller held a tiny box with a faded sticker. I walked to the stall. My heart beat fast. The seller opened the small box. Inside was a letter with my name. My hands shook. I said, "This is mine." The seller said, "A man sold it to me yesterday by the block. He said he found it by a fence." I looked and the man was near the market. He was not the seller. He wore a gray cap. I saw him take money. I ran after him. I called, "Stop." He turned and looked at me. People in the market stared. He dropped the parcel and ran. I picked up the parcel. Inside was my wooden box. It was dusty. My letters were safe. I felt a rush of joy and anger. I wanted to call the landlord and the community. I wanted to tell them the truth. I ran back to the block with the box in my arms. The neighbor saw me and his face went white. He tried to speak, but I shook my head. I walked to the landlord's door. I knocked hard. He opened slowly. I put the box on his table. I said, "This was stolen from my house." The landlord swallowed and said, "I will talk to him." Suddenly the neighbor left the house. People came out of their doors. I felt the block watch. The full truth seemed near. But change in the block takes time. The neighbor denied again in the light of day. He said he simply found the box. The landlord looked at the letters and frowned. He said, "We need to follow the rules." The neighbor called the police and said I was trespassing. I felt trapped and small. The police came. I had the box and the seller's note. I had people who saw the man sell the box. The scene felt like a test. The community had to choose sides. The police asked questions. I gave them my photo and the seller's note. The neighbor spoke fast. He said he did not steal. He said he found the box. The landlord listened and looked down. The community watched. Then a child from the block came forward. She said, "I saw him move things last week by the fence." Her small voice was clear. A woman from the block also said she saw the neighbor leave with a parcel. The police took statements. The neighbor became quiet. The landlord had to make a choice. He called a meeting at the fence near my house. We all went outside. The neighbor stood by his gate. The landlord stood in the middle. He said, "I am sorry for the trouble. I want peace on our block." People waited. The landlord looked at my box and then at the neighbor. He asked, "Why did you sell this?" The neighbor's face changed. He said, "I needed money. I thought the box was trash. I did not know it belonged to you." A murmur moved through the community. I felt a mix of pain and relief. I said, "You knew it was not trash. You looked at the letters. You laughed once when you read them." He did not answer. The landlord asked for a small fine and for an apology to me. The neighbor refused. He said he would leave the block. Then the neighbor did a strange thing. He walked to his car and put a small bag in the trunk. He returned with a folded paper. He handed it to me and said, "I am sorry." I opened the paper. Inside was a note and a small photograph. It was a photo of my mother and me from long ago. The neighbor said, "I found this under the fence and I knew I was wrong. I kept it in my pocket for days. I could not sleep. I came to return it now." His eyes were wet. The community fell silent. I felt the circle close. The person who caused the injustice had a moment of shame. The landlord said he would not press charges if the neighbor agreed to work for the community for 3 months. The neighbor nodded. He looked at me and said, "I will fix the fence and the small garden. I will be here and work." People in the block watched him. Some nodded. A woman from number 10 said, "It is good to make the block strong again." I felt my heart change. The injustice was not erased, but the neighbor returned the things and offered help. He stood near the fence and began to pick up trash. I stood with my box. I felt tired but lighter. The community began to speak softly. The dispute had a name now. It would take time for trust to return. But the neighbor had come back to the place where it began. I thought, this is the full circle. What was taken was here again. The block would heal slowly, and I would learn to forgive in small steps. I learned a hard lesson. I felt injustice deep in my heart. The neighbor took my box and my peace. He lied and he sold my things. I felt like a victim. But life moved in a circle. The community watched. People helped me find proof. The seller and the tenant at number 10 spoke. The landlord made a fair rule. The neighbor returned the box and said sorry. He agreed to work for the block. I forgave him in small steps. I kept my letters and I fixed the fence with him. The block felt safer after we all worked together. My fear became a lesson about truth and community. I learned to speak up early. I learned to keep proof and to ask neighbors for help. I also learned that people can change. In the end, I did not gain money, but I gained peace and more friends. If you feel injustice, speak to your community. Keep calm. Ask for proof. Ask for help from your landlord or the police. Trust can return slowly. That is my lesson and my hope for you.